opportunity, and let me take this opportunity also to thank Ms. Remo Sechari for such a beautiful rendition. Thank you, Remo. This was beautiful. And let me also acknowledge Professor Joseph Alexander, who rendered a song when we started, a wailing song in Yoruba. Many of us did not understand what she was saying, but you could tell from her face that she was really touched, and the song was saying, and thank you for comforting us, Professor Alexander. That is the spirit of Professor Masemola, a Pan-Africanist of note. Let me stand on existing protocols while I first acknowledge and thank the Masemola family, the Ngwenya family, the Mufulo family, especially his wife, Busi, or Bubu, as he fondly called her, for looking after our colleague, our friend, our comrade scholar, our former executive dean during his last days here on earth. Thank you so much to everyone. I wish I was speaking like Professor Madise and Professor Zengele as friends, because there's a lot that I can say about Khumbudzo, but I'm standing here on behalf of an organization called Africa Decolonial Research Network. So I'm speaking on behalf of others, and I may not do as I wish. But everything that was said is true of Professor Masemola. I have also traveled with him to Beijing, to Durban, to Tanga, to many places as we go through the research process and our academic excursion. So he's a very fun man when you are with him. He is always bubbly as you know him. So I'm here on behalf of others, as I say. I also wish to thank the management of the University of South Africa under the leadership of Professor Lenkabula for organizing this memorial service, even though Prof. Masemola is no longer with us. The leadership of the Executive Dean of College of Human Sciences, Professor Nkosi. This event has actually demonstrated for us Ubuntu in all its manifestation, and sincere gratitude from CHS to the Masemola family. Indeed, you have shared Khumbudzo with UNISA over the past many years. It was not going to be easy for UNISA, and especially CHS, to be quiet and just let this thing pass by, especially as it relates to Masemola's memory in this university. UNISA was his intellectual home. Although he served at various universities in this country, UNISA was his intellectual home. That's where he found himself as an academic to become the intellectual par excellence that he became. And UNISA, at a time when there are too many voices that speak about UNISA and his professorate, we are saddened to lose a professor of his caliber. This is the university that made him the best scholar that he became. And therefore, this is a big loss. That's what we want to say to the family, a big loss, not just to you, but also to all of us. You can imagine the loss that we are feeling as a university, as a country, as a continent. The representation that he was making at various platforms globally to ensure that the African voice, in particular, is heard and considered. We are going to miss that greatly. At UNISA, we were okay when he was just there at VUT, because he was just a stone throw away, because we could still brag about Masemola as a product of UNISA. So things are different now. Program director, allow me to add my voice to the voices of anguish that came before me. I will not say a lot from my heart, because I have already published my personal tribute on the UNISA Intercom. I've shared it with the family. Khumbudzo was many things to us. To many people, he was many things. Professori, Tau Yatswako, Solwas, Sage, good man, Don Michael. We called him so many things. And I can go on and on and on about the many names that he carried. Today, I stand here on behalf of the many members of the Africa Decolonial Research Network, an ideational space that was created here at UNISA, an intellectual movement that started here at UNISA to resuscitate and redefine the decolonization, Africanization agenda. And this group recognizes that many decolonial scholarship and voices came before us. However, this group constituted itself to specifically focus on studying those invisible power structures that continues to dominate, to exploit and oppress at three levels: at the level of power, at the level of being, and at the level of knowledge. Professor Masemola Tau engaged with ADEN at various platforms, physically and online, via the Decoloniality Network WhatsApp group, which we had put together in 2015. He was an interlocutor in many of our informal debates, and I remember many days at Beggars Park Hotel down the road. It was important for us as intellectuals to create spaces of engagement outside of these ivory towers, particularly as it relates to Black scholarship. Professor Masemola, in this debate, he was just a God's priceless gift to humanity in a world full of contradictions and paradoxes, in a country riddled with corruption, mediocrity, and shortcuts, in a university faced with persecutions all around and questions about UNISA's professor. The voiceless Masemola today is roaring from the grave as one of the best Afro-decolonial scholars of our time to emerge out of UNISA. An erudite, B-rated scholar, a prolific author, a sophisticated, stylish academic, and a prayer warrior. Many of you might not know, but his friends have already attested to this prayer warrior. Masemola was a true meaning of Black excellence. He always supported and encouraged us as women academics to do our best in whatever we were involved in. I worked with him in several platforms, the NHSS and many other platforms. We sat in selection committees together. He was also a fellow Senate representative in the publication committee and many other platforms. And he urged us as women to stand and avail ourselves for academic leadership as African women. He was a fellow compatriot who aspired for excellence and in taking this country forward through education. Program Director, allow me now to read a few messages from some of the ADEN members who interacted with Masemola during his lifetime. I will start with Professor Sabelo Ndlovu Gacheni, based at the University of Bayreuth in Germany, and he writes, condolences message, Professor Mike Makhomodzo Masemola was many things at once to me. Our encounter was at work at the University of South Africa. An easygoing and confident academic that Professor Masemola was, we easily began to engage on intellectual debates and to meet from drinks. I soon discovered the social side of Professor Masemola, particularly his dance floor competencies, of which I was very poor. And I also remember I was there at Professor Sabelo's house, where I thought I could dance, but Khobuzo put all of us down. I was also exposed to Professor Masemola's extraordinary mastery of the English language, of which I was envious. Prof. Masemola visited me twice at home when I stayed near the university, and he invited me for one of his birthdays to celebrate with him in Centurion. It is a great loss to bid farewell to such a fine scholar who had a depth of knowledge on such scholars as Deleuze, which he simultaneously researched on African scholars and putting them on the academic and intellectual map. Interestingly, Professor Masemola had an amazing knowledge of Zimbabwe, where Professor Sabelo Gacheni comes from, and he was concerned about such episodes as the 1980s genocidal attack on the Ndebele-speaking community in Zimbabwe that cost lives of more than 20,000. When he spoke about it, one could visualize Professor Masemola's deep Pan-African and empathetic humanistic side of an academic who was opposed to all forms of authoritarianism. I must say that such decorated intellectuals as Professor Masemola will never die. Through their intellectual and academic craft, they immortalized themselves. Their voice lives on in their works. I must also say that Professor Masemola, unlike many academics, did not shy from assuming leadership in academia. Hence, he became Dean of CHS and moved on to assume a similar position at Vaal University of Technology. Therefore, we were deprived of an intellectual leader at a time we desperately needed him. Lala Wotolo, mfowethu, owakho umsebenzi uwenzile, siyabonga. Professor Tendai Story from Department of Politics says, and this one he's saying as the home of the way, the tribute. Somar Fede, Nkulu, Gita, Grand Town, Nganyule Frostania Hao, and we could switch from jazz, techno, house, R&B with easy fluency, not to mention politics, literature, philosophy, and our disagreements. Kitletika Skele, Professor Wabantu, Gita, Dao, Gita. The sage of Afrocentricity, Professor Mulifikete Asante, from the United States University, says, I mourn with many friends the passing of Humuzo Masemola, the literary giant and brilliant scholar whose personality was a lodestone of optimism and promise. May he live forever in the memory of our people. Fly on, so that's Professor Mulifikete Asante. Let me conclude with a poem by Head of National School of Governance and other member, Professor Busani Ngani. The thing about that is that Tso Masemola lives, by Busani Ngani. The thing about death is that death is a heinous guest. Looting our precious companions, death is indecent, like a shadow still in the light. Untimely, like a clock that stops too soon. Inconsiderate, like a guest who departs without a farewell. Uncomfortable, like a heavy shroud that suffocates. Inconsistent, like rain in the Sahel. Unbelievable, like a mirage that fades upon approach. Indiscriminate, like a storm that spares no one. Unforgivable, like a betrayal from a trusted friend. Indifferent, like the distant stars that gaze upon our pain. Unkind, like frost that wills the hardiest bloom. Inconceivable, like a riddle with no answer. Intrigued by the idea of life beyond, we peer into the abyss. In the realm of Bhakti, Tso Masemola's life unfolded like a theater with crescendos of grandeur and soft notes of humility, all within the carnival's subverting tropes about academics as dull and poor beings. His story is an autobiography written in the ink of encounters, from Soweto to London, from Limpopo to KwaZulu-Natal. Men and women of letters do not surrender to death. They merely exchange their passion for the cosmos, passing the quill of wisdom to eager hands and curious minds. How else can we explain the endurance of Eskia Mpahlela, Ntongela Masilela, Phyllis Ntantala, and Bessie Head? Death hushed their voices, but their echoes, the echoes of their words, reverberate like ancient melodies. And now our Masemola has joined them, his literary ancestors, and we mourn him. Those with literary inclinations and celebrating him. The very eulogies we have read are a frontier, the study of Tso Masemola. How impactful can Escola be? We caution you in death. Your attempts to sever us from memories will fail. In the tapestry of life and death's weave, threads of remembrance intertwine. Death unites more than it divides. It elevates more than it diminishes, and it ushers souls into the ethereal embrace. That is the thing about Tso that Tso Masemola lives on. I want to wish to thank you, Program Director. That is the end of the messages from Aden. And on behalf of Aden, Relalelena Tidau Jazwako, Relalelena Batbara Masemola, Juma Arelelena, weeping maybe for a night, but joy comes in the morning. On that glorious morning, Joy will rise to never leave us again. Somebody says, memories are a gift from a God that even death cannot erase. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Paswana. Indeed,